The moment a father pushed his most beautiful daughter forward and said, "Take her," the most powerful man in the room turned and chose the sister nobody even looked at, and nobody saw it coming. There are two daughters in this story. One was dressed in silk, hair done perfectly, smiled the way her father trained her to smile. The other stood quietly in the corner, wearing a plain blue dress, eyes down, hands folded, like someone who had already accepted that this moment was not for her. She had been told her whole life that she was the less one, less pretty, less important, less worth choosing. And today, her own father was proving it in front of everyone. But the Duke had other plans. This is the story of what happens when a man raised on power, title, and wealth walks into a room full of politics and pretty faces and chooses the one person no one expected him to. This is about what he saw that her own family missed. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why his choice was the smartest thing anyone did that day. Let's go back to the beginning. The Duke was not a soft man. He came from a family where decisions carried weight, the kind of weight that moves money, land, and entire futures. He had been through rooms like this before, rooms full of people trying to impress him, sell him something, offer him something. He had learned very early that the most decorated thing in the room is usually the one hiding the most problems. So when Lord Hargrove, the father, invited him to the estate, the Duke already knew what kind of meeting this was going to be. He had heard the stories. Two daughters, one beautiful, polished, and presented at every event like a prize at a fair. The other, the younger one, Clara, barely mentioned, barely seen. Lord Hargrove had been struggling for years. His land was bleeding money. His title meant little without the backing to support it. What he needed was a powerful connection. And the Duke was the most powerful connection available. So he did what men like him do. He made an offer using the only currency he thought mattered, his daughter. When the Duke arrived, the elder daughter, Vivian, was already positioned near the entrance. She looked perfect. That is not an insult. She genuinely looked perfect. Her smile was exactly the right size. Her posture was straight. Her laugh came at exactly the right moments. She had been coached so thoroughly that there was almost nothing left of her underneath all that coaching. The Duke was polite. He sat, he listened. He sipped his tea without making a sound. And then he noticed something. In the far corner of the room, sitting near a window with a book open in her lap, was Clara. She was not trying to be seen. She was reading. Actually reading, not pretending to read to look interesting. When a servant dropped a tray near the doorway and the whole room tensed, Clara was the only one who immediately stood up to help pick things up. Not because anyone told her to, not because the Duke was watching, just because someone needed help and she was nearby. She sat back down, kept reading, didn't look over to see if anyone noticed. The Duke noticed. He asked Lord Hargrove quietly who she was. The father almost looked embarrassed to explain. He said something like, "Oh, that's just Clara, my younger one." The way you'd explain. A piece of furniture that's been there so long you stop seeing it. That one sentence told the Duke everything he needed to know about this household. A man who described his own daughter the way you'd describe. A spare room was not a man the Duke wanted to be permanently attached to through marriage. But the daughter herself, that was a different story. He asked to speak with her. Lord Hargrove agreed, confused, probably thinking this was a formality. He pulled Clara aside and told her to be presentable. She came to the sitting room, stood in front of the Duke, and the first thing she said was, "I'm sorry. I'm not really sure what you'd like to talk about." Father didn't explain. No performance, no rehearsed lines, just honesty from someone who had no reason to pretend because nobody had ever told her she needed to. They talked for 40 minutes. She had opinions, real ones. She disagreed with him on two separate things and said so. Directly, but without being rude. She asked him questions about his estate that showed she actually understood how land management worked, because she had been reading about it, not to impress anyone, just because she found it interesting. When the Duke stood up to leave, Lord Hargrove immediately stepped forward with Vivian again, smiling, presenting, selling. The Duke stopped him. He said very calmly that he was not interested in Vivian. He said he would like to move forward with Clara, if she agreed. And he made it clear that the "if she agreed" part was not optional. He was asking her, not her father. The room went completely silent. Lord Hargrove looked like someone had rearranged all the furniture in his house while he was sleeping. He started to say something about Vivian being the more suitable choice, more prepared, more experienced in social settings, more. The Duke cut him off. Not loudly, just firmly. He said something that Lord Hargrove was not going to forget for a long time. He said, "I don't need a woman who was prepared for me. I need a woman who is prepared, period." Then he looked at Clara and asked her directly what she thought. She was quiet for a moment. You could see her thinking, not calculating, actually thinking. Then she said yes, not dramatically, Just yes, the way someone agrees to something when they've waited honestly and it makes sense. And that was it. Lord Hargrove got his connection. Vivian, freed from a performance she never asked to give, eventually found her own path. And Clara, the girl who was handed the corner of every room she ever walked into, walked out of that house as the woman who would stand beside one of the most respected men in the country. But here is the part of this story that I actually want you to sit with. The Duke did not choose Clara because she was secretly more beautiful or because the story needed a twist. He chose her because she was real in a room full of people performing. And in his world, and in any world, honestly, that is rare. Rare enough to be worth everything. We live in a time where people spend enormous energy packaging themselves. The resume is polished. The profile picture is filtered. The first impression is rehearsed. And none of that is wrong. Presentation matters, it always has. But there is a ceiling on what packaging can do. Because the moment you are actually in the room with someone for 40 minutes, having a real conversation, the packaging starts to peel. Clara had no packaging. She had herself, and herself was more than enough. There is something else, too. The Duke asked for her opinion. That detail is small, but it is not small at all. He was not willing to take a person the way you take a piece of land, by negotiating with whoever owns the title. He understood that the woman standing in front of him was a person with her own answer, and that her answer mattered. That is also rare. And Clara, she could have said no. Nobody would have blamed her. She was being pulled into a decision in a room full of people who had spent decades making decisions for her. She could have frozen. She could have deferred to her father. Instead, she thought it through and gave an honest answer. Two people in a room full of noise, both choosing to be straightforward with each other. That is how this story actually ended. Not with drama or a grand gesture, just two honest people making a clear choice. The overlooked sister was never actually overlooked. She was just surrounded by people who did not know what they were looking at. If this story hit different for you, the next video on the screen is going to do the same thing. Don't skip it.